All right, so, we love diving deep into the stuff you send us, and today's no different.
Hmm.
We're taking a look at some excerpts from Sun Tzu's The Art of War,
Hmm.
but specifically Chapter 11.
Yeah, the 9 situations.
Like
Yeah.
9
Sure.
situations, and this is, I mean, everyone always says this, but it's like so relevant to like way more than just,
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely.
ancient warfare.
I mean, the way Sun Tzu breaks down like different environments and then the strategic logic that follows is, I think, incredibly applicable to like way beyond just the battlefield.
Totally. And whether you're like, I don't know, trying to get a leg up at a tough market or trying to like
Right.
steer a project, in the right direction,
Yeah.
even just like a tough interpersonal dynamic, like understanding the lay of
Yeah.
the land and adapting your approach is
Totally.
paramount.
It's huge.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sun Tzu starts with dispersive ground.
Okay.
What's the core insight here?
So dispersive ground. This is like when you're fighting on your own territory, right?
Okay.
And Sun Tzu's primary advice is actually kind of surprisingly direct. He just says avoid battle.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that thinking here goes beyond just familiarity with the terrain, right?
Right.
Like when troops are defending their home turf, their priorities can actually become fragmented.
Okay.
They might be more worried about their family is safe or their
Mhm.
local area instead of the bigger picture strategic objectives.
So it's not just like, oh, I'm comfortable here. I know this place. It's like
Right.
there's other distractions.
Exactly. It can lead to like a lack of cohesion
Mhm.
and like even a reluctance to take risks that might be necessary.
That's so interesting. It's like the opposite of what you would think.
Yeah, it's almost counterintuitive,
Yeah, totally.
but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the second situation is facile ground.
Okay.
What's the strategic direction there?
So facile ground describes when you've pushed into enemy territory, but just a little bit, like
Yeah.
a shallow penetration.
Okay.
And here Sun Tzu says, don't stop. Keep moving.
Don't halt.
Don't halt. Yeah. The danger is like pausing too soon before you've established like a secure position, right?
Right.
You're in enemy territory, you're still vulnerable, and stopping gives the enemy a chance to like regroup, yeah, cut you off.
Right.
Stopping prematurely lets them solidify their defenses against you.
So it's like keep them on their back.
Yes,
What?
and maintain that momentum.
Gotcha. Okay. Up next, we have contentious ground.
Ugh.
This sounds like a place where like both sides are like,
Oh,
yeah, this is good.
This is a good one. So contentious ground is territory that offers a big advantage to whoever controls it.
Okay.
So Sun Tzu says, don't attack.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I know it seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, like if it's so good.
Exactly. If it's so valuable, why not just take it?
Yeah.
The logic is that if it's obvious to you, it's obvious to the enemy, too. They're going to be dug in ready for you.
Oh, so a direct assault is just like,
Yeah, it's going to be a bloodbath.
yeah, okay.
So instead of that, the focus should be either, outmaneuvering the enemy somehow so you can secure it peacefully,
Right.
or finding some alternative target
Okay.
that might make them, weaken their control of that
Interesting.
contentious
That's-
ground.
Okay, so it's more like patience and indirect action.
Exactly.
Rather than just like,
Brute force,
Yeah.
head on,
I gotcha.
not going to work.
Okay, that makes sense. Number 4 is open ground.
Okay.
This seems kind of straightforward.
Yeah, open ground's pretty much what it sounds like, terrain that allows free movement for both sides.
Okay,
So you and the enemy can move around pretty freely.
makes sense.
And in this scenario, since he says, don't block the enemy's path.
Huh.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of interesting
Yeah.
because you would think you'd want to cut them off or something.
Yeah.
But in open terrain, trying to create an obstacle can actually put you at a disadvantage.
So it's like you're fighting the environment instead of the enemy.
Exactly. Your energy is better spent focusing on your own positioning,
Cool.
developing a flexible strategy,
Gotcha.
anticipating their movement rather than trying to restrict their movement.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All right, we're at the midpoint now.
Halfway there.
Number 5 is ground of intersecting highways.
Okay.
This sounds like a pretty key hub.
Yeah, this is a big one. So this refers to territory that's key to 3 different states that are all next to each other.
Okay.
So basically, whoever controls this controls a whole region.
Gotcha.
And Sun Tzu's recommendation here is form alliances.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, given how strategically important this kind of ground is, trying to hold it yourself is almost impossible.
Right.
You need to collaborate, you need shared resources,
Yeah.
you need a unified front with your allies to really take advantage of it.
Strength in numbers.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes total sense. Number 6 is serious ground. The name itself sounds kind of precarious.
Yeah, this one's a little dicey. So, serious ground is when you've advanced pretty deep into enemy territory, and now you've got enemy fortifications behind you.
So you're in deep.
You're in deep. Yeah, and Sun Tzu's advice here is take what you can,
Oh, okay.
gather plunder.
Okay.
Now, this isn't just about like opportunistic looting or anything.
Right.
It's actually really important. Being so far from your own supply lines means you need to live off the land.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you got to sustain your troops. And it also has like a psychological effect too.
Okay.
You know, it reinforces their commitment to the mission,
Oh, wow.
gives them tangible rewards for their efforts.
So it's like, I'm here, I might as well get what I can.
If you're committed, you're invested.
I gotcha. Okay, so now we're on to number 7, difficult ground. What are we talking about here?
So this is pretty much what it sounds like. Terrain that's just hard to move through.
Okay.
Think like dense mountain forests, rugged landscapes, marshes, that kind of thing.
Well, it's just like the environment itself is the challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And Sun Tzu's advice here is keep moving.
Yeah, okay.
Maintain a steady pace.
So like even if it's slow, just...
Exactly. Consistency is key.
Okay.
Because the terrain itself is the obstacle. If you get bogged down, lose your way, your forces get scattered.
You're vulnerable.
Super vulnerable, yeah.
Gotcha. So just keep moving forward.
Exactly, even if it's slow.
Steady wins the race kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay. Number 8, hemmed in ground. This sounds like a trap.
Yeah, this one is a potential trap for sure. So hemmed-in ground is characterized by narrow passages, gorgeous places with difficult routes of retreat.
Okay.
So you can get in, but it's hard to get out.
Yeah, gotcha.
And the problem is, in a confined space like that, even a smaller enemy force can really mess you up.
Right, because you don't have space to maneuver.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Right.
So Sun Tzu says, resort to stratagem.
Yeah.
Conventional warfare in this situation is almost guaranteed to be a disaster. You got to be clever. You got to use deception.
So outsmart, not overpower.
Exactly. You got to exploit the enemy's assumptions to survive.
Gotcha. So it's like a thinking man's battle.
Yeah, you got to use your brain in this one.
Okay, that's fascinating. All right, finally we arrive at number 9. Desperate ground. This just sounds like the last resort.
It's do or die time.
Yeah.
Desperate ground is when your survival depends entirely on fighting right now.
Okay.
There's no other options.
Wow.
And so Sun Tzu's advice is fight.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. When retreat is impossible, the only way out is through the enemy.
So you got to instill that, like, will to fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to emphasize there's no alternative.
It's like backs against the wall.
Exactly. It's all or nothing.
Wow. Okay, so we've walked through the 9 grounds.
Mm-hmm.
We got the initial strategic advice. But Sun Tzu, he doesn't stop there. He kind of like broadens his perspective and gives us these overarching principles that connect these different situations.
Yeah, he ties it all together.
Yeah, so what are some of the key takeaways there?
So one of the crucial principles he talks about is this idea of driving a wedge. Great. A skilled leader understands how to break apart the enemy's unity, right?
Yeah.
Create divisions between their front and rear elements. Large and small units even exploit friction between like different factions within their forces or between officers and their men.
So it's like you're taking a big force and just kind of breaking it down into
Yeah, divide and conquer.
divide and conquer.
Weaken their effectiveness as a whole.
Okay, and what about when you're facing like a really like orderly enemy force?
Yeah. When you've got a large, well-disciplined enemy that's ready to attack you, Sun Tzu suggests you take something that they really value.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this could be a strategic location, a vital resource, or even something that's important to their leadership personally.
So you're finding their weak point.
Exactly.
Not necessarily a physical weak point, but
It
like,
could be a psychological weak point.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
like, oh, they love this thing, let's go get it.
yeah, you take away something they think is essential,
Yeah.
then they got to react.
They gotta react.
You disrupt their plans.
And then they're fighting on your terms.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. And you know, one thing that we see throughout the art of war is that speed is so important.
Speed is key.
Um,
You got to exploit moments when the enemy's not ready.
right,
You got to use unexpected routes of attack.
right.
Hit them where they're not expecting it.
Hit them where they're weak, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, the element of surprise and swift execution can often make up for being outnumbered or other disadvantages.
Totally. Okay, so Sun Tzu also talks about the specific dynamics of an invading army as it pushes deeper into enemy territory.
Yeah, and one of his insights here is that the further an invading force goes, the more unified they become.
Huh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of what you might think.
Yeah,
But
Totally agree.
because they're far from home and facing a common enemy, they become more reliant on each other.
Right.
This heightened solidarity can actually balance out the advantages that defenders have from fighting on their own turf.
So it's like the further you go, the stronger you get, in a way.
Exactly. And to reinforce that unity, Sun Tzu recommends making forays to secure supplies and making sure your soldiers are taken care of.
So it's like a morale boost, too.
Absolutely. Keep them happy, keep them fed, and they'll fight harder.
Okay, so what about when you're dealing with your own troops and, like, the idea of retreat? What does Sun Tzu say about that?
Yeah, so Sun Tzu, he argues that when soldiers feel like there's no way out, they fight harder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy idea.
Yeah.
But when there's no option of falling back, they have to focus everything on winning.
Right.
He suggests that in desperate situations, fear actually disappears, and you get this, like, extraordinary courage.
So it's like that primal survival instinct.
Exactly. It kicks in, and you get this, like, unwavering fighting spirit.
Oh, okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we've talked about, like, the troops in the different situations. What about the leader?
The general.
Yeah, the general. What does Sun Tzu say about their role?
So Sun Tzu says the skillful general is like the brain of the army.
Okay.
They're in complete control. They need to keep their plans secret.
Right.
They need to be fair to maintain order and discipline.
Gotcha.
And they even need to use deception sometimes to mislead the enemy,
Okay.
and sometimes even their own officers.
Uh-huh.
It's about projecting this aura of total control
Right.
and, like, single-minded purpose.
Like, I got this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we talked about the 9 grounds before, but Sun Tzu, he doesn't just give general advice. He goes back and gives, like, tailored tactical advice for each situation.
Yeah, he breaks it down situation by situation.
Yeah, so what's an example of that?
So, for example, on dispersive ground, remember, that's when you're fighting on your own territory. The priority is to make sure all your forces are working together with the same goal.
Okay.
On facile ground, where you've just made a small advance into enemy territory, you need to make sure you've got good communication throughout your army.
Okay.
On contentious ground, where everyone wants that valuable piece of land, the focus is on securing your supply lines and making sure your rear is protected. He goes through each one and emphasizes that you can't use the same approach for every situation.
Right.
You got to adapt your tactics to the specific challenges and opportunities.
It's like context is king.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. And he also talks about something that seems obvious, but I think is easy to forget, which is the value of local knowledge.
Yeah, knowing the terrain is so important. You got to understand the landscape, the obstacles, the best routes to take.
Yeah.
And Sun Tzu really emphasizes using local guides
Okay.
because they have that knowledge. And he sees a leader who doesn't know the terrain as a huge weakness.
It's like walking into a trap, basically.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Okay, so we've got the terrain. What about the army itself? Like, what does Sun Tzu say about a well-functioning army?
So according to Sun Tzu, a good army is one that stays together,
Okay.
both when they're moving and when they're camped.
Okay.
So when they're on the move, they don't get separated.
Right.
And when they're stationary, they're not easy to divide and conquer.
So it's like strength and unity.
Exactly. Maintain that structure,
Okay.
and you'll be much more resilient.
Gotcha. And then finally, he talks about the need for tactical flexibility.
Oh, yeah. You can't be stuck in your ways.
Right.
You got to adapt to the situation.
Yeah.
A good leader is always assessing the enemy and changing their strategy as needed.
So it's like you have your plan, but you're ready to...
Throw it out the window
Yeah.
if you have to.
Exactly. Okay. So we've covered a lot here,
Yeah, a lot of ground.
literally and figuratively.
Uh-huh.
So for you listening,
Yeah.
as you're navigating your own, complex environments, whether it's work or personal projects or really anything where you're trying to achieve a goal, how can these insights from Sun Tzu help you?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to think about these 9 types of ground as like metaphors
Okay.
for your own life,
Yeah.
So like, are you in a dispersive ground situation where your team's focus is all over the place?
Right.
Maybe you need to unify your goals. Are you just starting out on a new project and you're in facile ground?
Okay.
Maybe the key is to keep that momentum going.
Don't get bogged down.
Exactly. And what about a tough negotiation?
Right.
Maybe that's contentious ground,
Okay.
where being aggressive isn't going to help.
Right.
So identifying what kind of ground you're on can really help you figure out your best strategy.
It's like a lens to view your...
Yeah, a framework for thinking about it.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the big takeaways here is that it's all about adapting to the situation,
Absolutely.
right? Understanding your environment, maintaining unity and focus,
Yeah.
and balancing careful planning with...
The ability to move quickly
Yeah.
when you need to.
Exactly.
It's about thinking strategically,
Yeah.
no matter what you're doing.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Sun Tzu's 9 situations, I think it's clear that even though this was written for ancient warfare...
Thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
It's still so relevant today.
Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom here.
Yeah, it's timeless.
That can help us in all sorts of situations.
Yeah, it's all about assessing the situation
Yeah.
and then taking the right action.
So here's a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Which of these 9 types of ground do you find the most challenging, and why?
Yeah.
What would Sun Tzu say you should do to navigate that terrain?
That's a great question.
Yeah, maybe go back and reread this chapter with that in mind.
Definitely.
Yeah, and until next time,
Keep thinking strategically.
keep thinking strategically.